Good morning and welcome to Opera House Arts Coffee on the Couch. This is a very specific time of 20 minutes that we create to focus on the life and experience of a member of our community. At the heart of our mission in the performing arts at the Stonington Opera House is storytelling. And we believe in hearing each other's stories and fostering a curiosity for people's stories. We're very grateful to have our very first Coffee on the Couch guest, Stuart Kestenbaum. Thank you so much for joining us. And as we do with this program, we'll go ahead and start the clock. Esther, whenever you're ready, maybe you can give me a thumbs up. Thanks. Stuart Kestenbaum, welcome to Coffee on the Couch.
Happy to be here and there with all of you.
So the format for this meeting is that we'll go around and we'll ask you questions. And my first question would be, where are you right now? And what does that space mean to you in your life?
Right now I'm in what is our downstairs room that we have our musical instruments in and two couches. And so we call it the living room or the music room. And I'm looking out across Route 15 at the amazing tire tracks that have been left lately. You notice that there's been an expansion of the artwork of the tire work on the island now that it's a little bit like wild animals encroaching on space because it's all the way down Main Street on Route 15. So I'm looking across at those to low tide. So it's a space where I can look at the horizon from. I see sunsets from here. So and I think it always reminds me I live in a remarkable part of the earth, part of the country. And we also we stream movies here too. I'm not going to do that during the daytime. I've resisted that impulse, even though I realize it's available to me. I think it feels a little bit like having soda for breakfast, or you don't want to start certain things too early.
Stu, are you reading anything interesting at the moment?
I've been reading, I just finished a book by Jill Lepore called We the People. It's a history of the United States. And then I read kind of a mystery by Michael Kimball, who's a Maine writer, called Undone. I've been reading quite a bit, and this morning I was reading Jim Harrison's poetry and Jane Hirshfield's poetry. So I'm trying to, I read every morning. So I try to read first thing in the morning while I'm pretty smart, alert, not sleepy. And so I do a lot of my reading in the morning. And it's actually been a great time for reading. I got a lot of books that I haven't read yet. I'm only working with the ones I have. So, right now I'm reading a book, but I just started it, so I can't tell you the name of it or the name of the author without running upstairs to find it. But it's dealing with looking at our economy of entrepreneurial economy that leaves so many people out, and looking at it as entrepreneurs want to say it's a win-win situation. Like, we'll start a charter school because we're so smart and we know how to make things really great, instead of saying we'll actually pay more taxes so everybody can have good public schools. So, and how that perpetuates, having people who want to do good, who are elite, actually perpetuates a system of unfairness, which seems to me like ever since our pandemic has struck, it just becomes so clear how unequal things are in our country and our world.
If you do find the title of that book, I'd love to read it as well.
Should I just leave it somewhere for you?
My first question is, what's something that has delighted you in this past week?
This past week, well, so we do FaceTime. We have a grandson named Wally who lives in Portland, and he's 19 months old. He loves to dance, and Isaac, our son, sent a movie where it kind of frames where he is in the house, and he's like a dance company where they run across and then they run back the other way, but you can't see him go off stage. It really frames it. So he was like jumping or skipping, then he comes by, he's holding a ball and he's jumping. He's not conscious he's making a dance, but it made it like give it a form that I love that. And yesterday I just learned a new open tuning, which I hadn't known before. That's one that Bob Dylan uses on Shelter from the Storm, which I came to because that was the Saturday Night Live last night, or whenever it was. The guy from Coldplay did a version of it. So I just looked it up again. And anyhow, it's a slightly different open tuning than I've used. And it's such a beautiful sound. I've always loved that song. And now I was just happy to have that tuning, which I'd never had. Maybe you could explain the variation in different open chord tunings when it's the same open chord, but there's one note that's different. I don't really get it. That would be a long thing. Maybe when I give you the book, you can tell me that.
I'll write out a little.
Anyway, it's kind of that's always a miracle with open tuning, because it's like you've gotten something for nothing. Basically, you just strum it and you've gotten one sound to begin with.
I've really just stumbled upon open tuning and have been playing around with them a lot these past weeks.
Yeah, so this one has it's an open D, but it's like D, A, D, F sharp, A, D.
That's one of the best ones you can play.
And it's great. I love it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So
I'm Joni Mitchell too.
What's that, Esther?
So a lot of Joni Mitchell songs are in that tuning.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
I'll work on that next.
So, Stuart, I'm wondering if there are any other art makers or really creative people in your family, either living or past. I'm just inspired by your grandson dancing. And is there anyone in your family that's really taken to the arts that you might want to tell us about?
Well, my wife, Susan, has, I think been an inspiration to me in terms of how she does so many things artfully. I mean, like an artistic, open, creative process in doing things. So whether it's making visual work, which she does upstairs right from here, or when she takes a recipe and says, well, that sounds like a pretty good idea for this recipe, but then I decided to do this and this. And so she can see things as a framework, not an orthodoxy, that it's, which maybe is kind of at the heart of a creative process, where it's not like, well, it says do this, 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 and this. It becomes, you're stuck. If it says, well, here's the framework, what can you make within the framework? And I think she has really, I might lean more towards an orthodoxy, like, oh, we better not do that. And she'll say, well, I don't know, I decided to put more cornmeal in, and it's like, wow, it's okay, you can do that. Like who's making the rules or who's in charge? And I think that grows out of an artistic or creative process. So I think that's really opening up to a different way of seeing.
Mm. And she's also a working artist as well, right?
Right. And then we make work together. So then we, which is interesting because we don't discuss it, like we don't plan it. We just respond. We don't say, oh, I'm going to make work that's like this. You think you could do something that's like that? Because I add the text. So Susan will do an image, or it might be a kind of print, or generally an abstracted thing, and then I may add text, and she may do more. But we don't ever say, let's make work that's about this. It's more that we're just saying, it's maybe it's like if you're making music with somebody, you don't always. If you're playing a particular song, you want to get a certain way. That's one thing. But if you're improvising, then you're moving from you're responding to their emotion with your emotion, but then they're meeting someone and becoming another thing. Mm. If that made sense, but
yeah.
Stu, how did you two start collaborating, and was that the way you collaborated from the beginning? Yeah.
We wanted to be we were invited to be in a show at the Center for Maine Contemporary Art, and when it was in Rockport, Bruce Brown was the curator, and he said, I'm inviting couples who make art. And he invited, maybe there were like five couples to be in the show. Now, I don't actually make visual art, so we interpreted the assignment as we were going to make art together. When we got to the show, everybody else, like there's a furniture maker and a painter who are married to each other, and they had furniture and painting. It was like in school when you get the assignment wrong, but for us, it wound up being a happy accident because we had wanted to do it, and then this kind of gave us a deadline to do it. And at the time, Susan was, there's nothing here that's like, she's doing larger images that were monoprints, and then I started to use rubber stamps to put text in, and then she used Prismacolor sometimes to augment that, and we found we were kind of feeling certain things. The work helped us articulate what we were feeling, I guess, jointly, but we didn't talk about it, which was, I think that's generally how we've worked, and we haven't. And if one of us doesn't like a work, then we can take it out, like if we're making it. But generally, we'll agree on that too. It's surprising we don't argue over it. There's no it's not we could disagree over other things, and this seems very seamless. So that was in 2004. So it's been quite a while now. Our artist just about to get his driver's license. 16.
Can you tell us about a teacher or a mentor that has had a particular influence on you, and maybe what is something that you learned from them that still resonates with you today?
One person who comes to mind is Wes McNair, who you might know from stuff. He did things at the Opera House, the Poetry Express, and Wes was poet laureate before me. And I just, he's been very encouraging in terms of just supporting my efforts in writing, but also just the way that he can take a very universal, local Maine experience, like reading he has a poem about reading poetry to a Grange meeting, and other people are displaying potholders and other things, and how we might make a hierarchy. Well, whose art is better about this or that? And he just realizes that, this is his audience. This is what he's meant to do, and that everybody's work has a validity. And I think just honoring the local in that way, and his ability to distill experience has been when I hear a poem, I'll go, to me, he's always struck kind of the right note. So I think I just to try to get to that in my own work. Once you ask that question, then there are other people I think of. I never had anybody like in college who said, "Oh, you're this or that." I feel like I never really developed that relationship. It's all been, for me, the mentors have been really once I got out of school. Mm-hmm. I think I used to yearn to have a mentor, when I was younger, but I didn't. But I feel that other people like Liz Lerman, the choreographer with whom I worked when I was at Haystack, and I had met her long before that. But just seeing how she worked in communities, and you remember the dance that we did a long time ago,
Yeah.
that we brought the whole community together, and just to have a sense of, well, her lack of hierarchy too, I think probably is a thing. It's not like, oh, well, this is better than that, like that everything can have a validity to it. And maybe this pandemic kind of makes me think about that in some way too. It's like you really like take out a lot of hierarchies and everybody's zooming, right? uh, Tom Hanks looks pretty regular, doing Saturday Night Live. It's like you go, what? It's just like it's just different. There's something like we're so used to a pretty slicked up version of ourselves, and this has maybe made it like we're all anyhow. So I think Liz really was a big influence that way too. Very like a heartfelt way of looking at the world and communities. Do you remember doing that dance, Esther?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, vividly.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And they use those great journals from Dr. Noyes. They went to the Historical Society and they formed a kind of a core of the narrative, what it was like to live on the island.
Uh-huh.
So you mentioned the word local in your answer just now, and I'm wondering if there is a place or places on the island that you live that you like to go to, and if you could kind of describe that place to us, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, I like to go to my front porch and watch the sunset. And it's right on Route 15, so if it's a beautiful sunset, like in the summer, then people will stop in really unsafe places to take their photographs. And then if one person stops to see a beautiful sunset, then all of a sudden it's this accretion of people observing beauty. So somebody else thinks there must be something worth looking at. And then, you can have like 6 or 7 cars stopping, like in terrible, because people are not, it does say watch for pedestrians, but I think that's just what do they call it? An aspirational goal, So anyhow, I'd love to watch the sunset, and I can watch actually just from the front porches, like move all the way from Main Street, beyond Main Street in the winter, all the way up to the top of the harbor in the summer, and it lines up right on the solstice, like comes right in my windows, which I have to clean. I know it's time to clean them then because it comes right in, and just to watch the journey of the sun back and forth without leaving my front porch. I think that's like in the Tao Te Ching. I think they talk about that this idea of you don't have to leave home to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Esther, how are we on time?
I think we have time for probably one more. We have about 3 minutes.
Okay. Stu, one of my favorite memories from my first year at the Opera House was the reading you did from your book, How to Start Over. And I'm wondering if you have a particular memory from the Opera House that stands out for you as a good one.
I was thinking there's so many. Once I began to think about that, there's so many that came to mind. Like at the very beginning, just that you could see movies was an amazing thing. Mm-hmm. And then one was the collaboration. Maybe I'll just go to this one. Is when seeing Arturo O'Farrell perform. Mm-hmm. When we had worked with him when I was director at Haystack, and mm-hmm. we decided we were going to do an opera based on my orientation about what not to flush down the toilet. And he somehow pulled together a group of people to do this in a week and a half that we actually performed, not at the Opera House, but then to see this person we'd gotten to know perform with such an amazing group and have a full house there. When the Opera House is really full and it feels like, wow, this is like something. But but as I began to think, further, like the first group of Maine women that Debbie Weil did,
Mm.
just the
Okay.
power of people up on stage, or the Poetry Express that Wes did, and Garrett Aldrich selected a poem of mine to read, and I thought, wow, this is what I wanted my whole life, to have somebody in my community understand a poem, not that they understood it, but that it meant something to them, and they read it. So, or when Meg brought together old basketball teams and showed the old videos, and I thought, wow, this is the most crossover I've seen, in a place on the island, of people looking at that, and how welcoming a place the Opera House had become. So I it's like they're all very powerful reminders to me of what you do there, and how it's a place of convening that didn't. Well, it was 2001, like when we did that dance with Liz that I mentioned. It was really just starting, and I think Linda was writing for the newspaper. Things were going on. I think I might have my dates a little wrong, but the number of activities and a number of people in the community have been influenced by the Opera House is really, really pretty phenomenal. So you can't imagine, well, was it not here before? Well, it wasn't, but it feels like it's always been part of what goes on. So I didn't go with a specific. That may hurt me in the competition and in the voting. Maybe I'll make it up in the swimsuit. Anyhow, it's a remarkable resource.
We are at time, just perfectly, actually.
Good.
Well, thank you so much, Stu, for joining us today. We really, really appreciate it.
Great.